9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, April 27, 2008, Sham Shui Po, Hong Kong. A 16-year-old girl walks out of a small hotel into the daylight. She's dressed in black, she's carrying a yellow handbag, she has a phone in her pocket with a message already waiting on it, and she has 4 hours left to live. Now here's the thing about those 4 hours. Almost everything the world knows about them came out of the mouth of one man, and that man told the story 3 different times, 3 different ways, and every time one version stopped working, he simply built another one. So the question in this case was never really who. We knew who within 9 days. The question was which version, if any of them, was true. This is the case of Wong Ka-mui. Welcome back. It's Inspector Dax. Everything you're about to hear is real people, real evidence, and a truth that someone worked hard to keep buried. My job is simple. Open the file, lay it out piece by piece, and let you judge it for yourself. So let's get to work. She was born in 1991 in Hunan province in mainland China. Her parents split up when she was about 3. Her mother remarried in 1994 to a man from Hong Kong. Here's the part that usually gets skipped. When her mother moved south, she didn't take both daughters. She took the older one. Ka-mui stayed behind on the mainland, raised by relatives, while her mother and her sister built a life a few hundred miles away in a city she'd only heard about. She waited 5 years for her turn. In 2005, at 14, she finally got it. She crossed the border and moved into Kui Wo House in the Tai Wo public housing estate in Tai Po. Her mother made a living collecting scrap. Money was tight and it stayed tight, but she was there. After 5 years of waiting, she was finally there. And by every account she tried. She enrolled at Tai Po Samyuk Secondary School, where her sister was already a student, and she turned out to be a strong student. She won a school award for academic performance. She placed in speech and recitation competitions in Mandarin and in English. Think about that. A girl who'd been in Hong Kong barely 2 years, standing up in front of a room, reciting poetry in a language she was still learning and winning. She held a scholarship 2 years running. That is not a kid drifting. That is a kid sprinting. The problem was never the schoolwork. It was everything around it. She had a mainland accent in Hong Kong in 2005. That accent followed you into every classroom and marked you as an outsider before you opened your mouth twice. Her sister later described her as stubborn, said she didn't get on with her classmates, but that she had plenty of friends outside of school. Friends nobody in the family ever met, and her sister noticed something else. Ka-mui liked talking to people online, and she liked people who were older. At home, she and her stepfather clashed constantly, and she watched her mother go out and collect scrap. Hold on to that, because when people ask why a 16-year-old with a scholarship walked away from school, that's the answer her own family gave. It wasn't rebellion. She didn't want her mother doing that anymore. So she went looking for a shortcut. In 2007, she signed up for a modeling course because she wanted what a lot of 16-year-olds want. She wanted to be somebody. It didn't happen. The bookings never came. She told her family she'd landed work as a modeling assistant, bringing in serious money. And that was a lie she kept up for a while before quietly letting it drop. Then, in January 2008, she told her family she was leaving school. Her mother argued, her sister argued. She wouldn't move. She was in her 3rd year of secondary school, roughly 9th grade in the American system. She was also carrying a debt of around 50,000 Hong Kong dollars. Within weeks, she'd entered a world Hong Kong had been arguing about for years. They called it compensated dating. The idea was that it wasn't sex work, it was dates. Dinner, shopping, company, arranged online between young women and older men with money changing hands. In practice, for a lot of the girls involved, that line disappeared fast. It ran entirely on forums and instant messaging, which made it almost invisible to parents, almost invisible to police, and completely unregulated. She set up an account on an adult forum. She posted photos. She listed her rates. She ran 2 messenger accounts to handle clients, and she picked a name to work under. According to reporting at the time, she went by Kimmy. Her mother didn't know. Her sister, who she shared clothes with, who she signed up for a makeup course with 3 evenings a week, didn't know either. Saturday, April 26, 2008, 11 o'clock at night, Ka-mui and her older sister sat up talking in the flat at Kui Wo House. Nothing heavy, nothing memorable, just 2 sisters at the end of a Saturday. Then they said goodnight and went to their rooms. That was the last conversation they ever had. Sometime in the early hours of Sunday the 27th, Ka-mui left the flat. Nobody heard her go. Her sister woke up the next morning and the room was empty. She'd gone to meet a client, a regular, a man in his 20s who worked in software. They met at Sham Shui Po station in the dark. She was in black, carrying the yellow handbag, and they went to a hotel nearby. We'll come back to what happened in that room, because it isn't what you'd expect. At 9 in the morning, the two of them walked out of that hotel and went their separate ways. 16 minutes later, a message landed on her messenger account. The sender wanted to meet at 1 o'clock that afternoon at Sham Shui Po station. Get to the station, call this number, and he'd come down and collect her. At 4 minutes past 1 that afternoon, standing in that station, Wong Ka-mui made a phone call. It lasted 53 seconds. The number she dialed was a prepaid line registered to nobody. That call is the last confirmed moment of her life. A few minutes later, she walked into a building on Shek Kip May Street called Yen Fat Building and went up to a rented room on the second floor, a partitioned space, the kind carved out of a larger flat and rented cheap. She never came out. Tuesday, April 29th, a woman and her older daughter walked into a police station in the New Territories. Their story was simple and unfortunately extremely common. 16-year-old girl, left home 2 days ago, not answering her phone. Police took the report and opened a missing persons file. And I want to be fair here, because it's easy to look back and say they were slow. Hong Kong police handled thousands of missing teenager reports a year, and almost all of them ended with the kid coming home in a day or two, embarrassed and grounded. There was nothing about this file on paper that made it jump the queue. What changed everything was a computer. Officers went out to Kui Wo House and looked at the machine in Ka-mui's bedroom, and the browsing history opened up a life her family had no idea existed. The forum account, the photos, the posted rates, the 2 messenger accounts, records showing that on April 13 she'd put up a post and gone out late that night to meet someone, and that a week later, somebody had left a review of her. Her sister could not believe it. She told police the two of them talked about everything. She said Ka-mui had gotten quieter over the past few months, like she was carrying something she wouldn't put down. Long phone calls at night. Occasional nights she didn't come home, and every time the family asked, the answer was the same. She was out with her boyfriend. She never brought a boyfriend home, because there wasn't one. Police pushed the story out to the newspapers and asked for witnesses. On May 2nd, the software engineer saw her face in the paper and walked into a police station. He told them everything, the booking a week earlier, the messages afterward, the call in the early hours of the 27th, the station, the hotel, the 9 a.m. checkout, which made him on paper the last known person to see Wong Ka-mui alive, and therefore the prime suspect. He was cleared. Investigators checked his account against the hotel, her phone, her messages, and it held on every point. More than that, his timeline became the thing that let police narrow the fatal window down to a few hours. And here's the part I said we'd come back to. He told police that when she walked into that hotel room, she looked exhausted, genuinely worn out, so he didn't touch her. He said they lay on the bed and talked, and at some point they both fell asleep. In the morning, he paid her anyway. She talked that night. She told him she was trying to make enough money to give her mother a better life, and she told him she'd been burned by a modeling company, that instead of earning anything, she'd ended up owing them around $50,000, and that just the night before, they'd called demanding more, with a threat attached if she didn't pay. That's a secondhand story, a man repeating what a girl said after she was gone. The debt shows up in reporting from the time. The rest of it, police were never able to confirm. Keep it in your back pocket. Either way, they now had a working assumption. After she left that hotel, she went to meet somebody else. So they pulled her phone records. 53 seconds. 4 minutes past 1, a prepaid number with no name attached. Then they went back to her messenger logs and found the message sent at 9:16 that morning. The callback number in it matched the prepaid number exactly. And they traced where that message came from. A computer inside Yan Fat Building on Shek Kip May Street, a short walk from Sham Shui Po Station. An address in a block full of subdivided rooms is a starting point, not an answer. What turned it into an arrest was a man who couldn't sleep. On Tuesday, May 6th, a 30-year-old named Tian Teek walked into a police station and said he thought his best friend might have done something to the missing girl. Etsy and Ting Kai Tai had met about 10 years earlier, working at the same late-night restaurant, and they'd stayed close long after the job ended. On Saturday night, April 26th, the two of them went out to a nightclub in Simshatsui. TC said Ting wasn't just drinking, he was using ketamine, ecstasy. They stayed out until 7 the next morning. Then, on the night of Sunday the 27th, between roughly 9:30 and 11:30, TSE's phone rang 3 times. It was Ting, and what Ting told him was this. He'd killed a girl. He said they'd been having sex. He said she had told him she wanted to die, and he said he didn't know why, but he strangled her. Then he described what he'd done afterward, including that he'd put her bones into a container at a pork stall. TZ didn't believe him. He told himself Ting was high and talking nonsense, and when they met up days later, Ting waved the whole thing off. Just a joke. Except TSA couldn't forget it. Then he saw the newspapers. 16-year-old girl missing since April 27th, Sham Shui Po, and the dates lined up. He turned in his best friend of 10 years, over a phone call he'd been told was a joke. That night, officers set up outside Yanfat building. At 11, Ting Kai Tai came home, and they took him without a struggle. Then they went up to that second-floor room, and this next part matters more than anything else in the case. There was blood on the bathroom floor, on the walls, on the door frame, traces in the bedroom, on the computer desk, on the chair, on the carpet. There was blood on a disc still sitting in the drive. Nobody had cleaned properly. 9 days, and nobody had cleaned properly. Testing came back on all of it. Every sample was Wong Ka-mui. That's the foundation of this entire case, and I want you to notice something about it. It is the only major evidence in this story that doesn't depend on Ting Kai Tai telling the truth. Blood on a wall doesn't have a version. It doesn't change its story when the last one stops working. Everything else you're about to hear does. Because the first thing Ding did under questioning was name a second man, his flatmate. He said the flatmate had helped him get rid of the body. Police arrested him too. Then they checked, and the flatmate had a solid alibi. He hadn't been there. He hadn't helped with anything. He was released and never charged with anything connected to this case. Sit with that. Before Ting Kai Tai told police a single true thing about that afternoon, he tried to take an innocent man down with him. Over the days that followed, police recorded 7 video interviews with him. 7, and across those tapes you can watch a story get built, torn down, and rebuilt in real time. Version 1 came on May 7th. He said he'd put her body whole into a foam box, loaded it onto a trolley, wheeled it out to the Kowloon City ferry pier, and pushed it into the sea. Clean. Simple. 1 trip. So police took him out there. On the morning after his arrest, they escorted him down to the waterfront, and by 3 that afternoon, divers had gone down twice. They found nothing at all. Version 1 died right there on a Kowloon pier in front of the man who invented it. So before we get to what he said next, you need to know who was telling these stories. Ting Kai Tai was born in Hong Kong in 1984. He was 23 when Wong Ka-mui died, 24 by the time he was charged. When he was 5, he was in a car accident with his family. He suffered a serious head injury, and his mother was killed in the same crash. Whatever else you want to say about this man, hold on to that for a moment. 5 years old, a serious head injury, and his mother gone in the same instant. Relatives blamed his father for the crash. 2 years later, his father remarried, and by most accounts, the stepmother treated him well. But at 8, he was taken in for psychiatric assessment over his temper and his struggles at school, diagnosed with a behavioral disorder, and placed in a special school. At 15, he was sent to a boys' home for a year after assaulting someone. Around that same age, he started using drugs. He dropped out during his first year of secondary school. After that came a string of things: delivery work for a late-night restaurant, an apprenticeship installing air conditioning, selling contraband cigarettes, and at one point running a shop that sold stuffed animals. I'm going to let that sit without comment. He was heavyset, around 5'8", well over 200 pounds, with bleached hair, and people called him a name that translated roughly to fatting. Former co-workers described someone who liked to brag, who cut corners, who wanted to be paid without doing the work. He took 60,000 Hong Kong dollars from a finance company and burned through it, then took 200,000 more. When he couldn't pay, collectors started showing up at his door, and he moved out to get away from them. In June 2007, he rented that second-floor room on Shek Kip Mei Street for $2,000 a month. 10 months later, he came home from that nightclub at 7 in the morning, couldn't sleep, and opened his messenger. Version 2 came on May 8th, the day after the divers came up empty. This time, he said, what went into the sea was not her body, it was her head, weighted down according to one early police account, so it would never come back up. The rest went down the toilet, over hours, in a small washroom in a public housing block, into the Hong Kong sewer system. And what wouldn't flush, the bones he bagged up, carried down the street to the Shek Kip Mei market and left there. In one account, it was a refuse point. In the version read out in court, it was a basket at a butcher's stall. The court heard the whole thing took him between 6 and 8 hours. Here's why version 2 matters. Unlike version 1, it could be checked. Because in the days before his arrest, residents near that building had started complaining about a smell coming from the drains. Something dead, backing up under a shop at street level. On May 8th, drainage workers went into the sewers around the block, and when they tapped one of the pipes, the sound came back wrong. Something was blocking it. The next evening, they pulled sludge up out of a manhole and went through it by hand. In it, they found more than 20 pieces of what appeared to be human tissue. Testing confirmed it. It was her. That is what her mother got back, fragments recovered out of a drain. As for her head, police widened the underwater search off the Kowloon City Pier and kept at it. The commissioner of police went in front of the cameras and said the force would consider sending officers back out to dredge that stretch of water again. They never found it, not in 2008 and not in the 17 years since. And there's one more detail from those interviews, the one that's followed this case ever since. He had removed her face, asked in court why. He said it was because he couldn't stand to look at her. The prosecution offered a different explanation. They argued he did it so that if that head ever surfaced, nobody would be able to identify it as Wong Ka-mui. Two explanations for the same act, one from a man with a life sentence in front of him, one from lawyers reading the evidence. Hold that thought, because it comes back. When this went public in May 2008, Hong Kong lost its mind, and not primarily over the crime, over the market. Because he hadn't left those bones somewhere isolated. He'd left them inside a food market among pork bones in a residential neighborhood, and then gone home and carried on with his life for 9 days while that market kept doing what markets do. By the time police knew where to look, whatever had been in that basket was long gone. And the city did the math. Newspapers called it a cannibalism panic. Housewives stopped buying pork. Restaurants and tea houses lost customers. Butchers at Shek Kip Mei, people who'd done nothing wrong and had no idea any of this had happened at their own stalls, found themselves standing behind empty counters. And this is where the rumors took over. The story that spread wasn't that bones had been dumped as waste, it was that human remains had been mixed into meat and sold to families. Another version had it that the scraps were rendered into cooking oil and sent out to restaurants across the district. Neither was ever established as fact. Neither has ever been supported by any evidence. But both were repeated so many times that plenty of people in Hong Kong still believe them today. And that gap is the most interesting thing about this chapter. The truth was that bones were left in a bin. The fear was that a city had unknowingly eaten a murdered girl, and it was the fear people remembered. One Hong Kong criminologist made a comparison at the time that stuck. He said the coldness of the man behind this reminded him of a case from 1982, when a taxi driver took the lives of 4 women, the youngest 17, and kept parts of them at home. They called that one the rainy night butcher. Nobody makes that comparison about a man who panicked. The other thing that happened was that Hong Kong finally had to look straight at compensated dating. For years it had been treated as a fringe internet thing. Now there was a dead 16-year-old attached to it, and everyone could see the mechanics. How easy it was, how anonymous, how invisible to any parent who wasn't reading their kids' instant messages. Authorities put out warnings aimed at teenagers. Broadcasters ran documentaries. By 2009, international news crews were in Hong Kong doing stories on schoolgirls selling sex for shopping money. None of it brought Wong Ka-mui back. July 2009, the Court of First Instance. One judge, Mr. Justice Alan Wright, and a jury of 7. 2 charges, murder, and preventing the lawful burial of a body. He pleaded guilty to the second. He denied the first. And I need you to understand what that means. because most retellings of this case get it flat wrong. He did not walk into that courtroom and confess. He admitted what he did to her body. He fought the charge of causing her death, all the way to a verdict. Which brings us to version 3. His defense was diminished responsibility. He argued he'd been drinking and using ketamine and ecstasy the night before and that morning, that he'd blacked out, and that he came to in the mid-afternoon to find her already dead in his bed. He said he couldn't remember how it happened. There was even a medical theory attached that heavy drug use could produce a kind of automatism where a person carries out complex actions while barely conscious and keeps no memory of them. The prosecution took that apart from 3 directions. First, the medicine. The director of a substance abuse treatment center told the court flatly that no medical literature documented drug abuse producing that condition. Second, the tapes. If you genuinely don't remember, how did you describe it all in such detail the first time? Because that's what the jury saw. 7 interviews, hours of footage, a man walking police step by step through what he'd done, with recall so specific it was difficult to sit through. And in those early interviews, he never mentioned drugs, not once. The blackout only appeared later in a courtroom with a life sentence in front of him. He also told police he couldn't remember how she died, and in the same breath said he remembered strangling her for 1 to 2 minutes. You can have one of those statements, you cannot have both. And third, an expert witness stood up and said the thing that ended it. Looking at everything Ting Kai Tai did across those hours, the expert's assessment was that his conduct was extremely inhuman and extremely rational. Rational. Not confused. Not blacked out. Rational. That's the word that closes the door on version 3, and it's the same word hanging over the question of why he removed her face. On July 27, 2009, the jury of 7, 4 men and 3 women went out for just under 3 hours. They came back unanimous, guilty on both counts. Justice Wright sentenced him to 4 years for preventing lawful burial and, as Hong Kong law required, life imprisonment. Hong Kong had abolished the death penalty in 1993, so life was the maximum available. The judge told him what he'd done to her body was close to the worst thing imaginable, that it was sickening and terrifying, and that it was no exaggeration to call his conduct barbaric. Ting Kai Tai stood in the dock and frowned. So let's do the accounting, because after 3 versions it's worth being precise about what we know and what we're simply being told. What we can prove without him, that she left that hotel at 9, that a message reached her at 9:16, that she made a 53-second call at 4 minutes past 1, that she entered that building, that her blood was all over that room, that parts of her came out of a drain 100 feet away. That's the case. That's what a jury could convict on, and did. What rests entirely on his word? The foam box, the trolley, the order of events, the blackout, and one more thing, the single most repeated detail in every retelling of this case for 17 years, that she told him she wanted to die. Think about where that came from. A phone call made by a man who was high on the night it happened to a friend he was already trying to explain himself to. It was never corroborated by anyone. No message, no note, nobody else ever heard her say anything like it. Her sister, who talked to her the night before, described an ordinary Saturday evening. And yet that line has followed Wong Ka-mui for almost 2 decades. It's in the documentaries, it's in the film, it's the thing people remember about her. A dead girl's supposed last wish, sourced to the one person on Earth with a reason to invent it. There are 2 theories that still circle this case. Theory number 1, the party. Go digging in Hong Kong internet forums from 2008 and you'll run straight into this. The rumor was that what happened in that room wasn't 1 man and 1 girl. It was a group, several people present, drugs involved, Ka-mui overdosed, her death was an accident, and the men there covered it up together. Police investigated and found nothing. The flatmate's alibi held. And it doesn't survive contact with the physical evidence because the cause of death was established as strangulation, not an overdose. But the rumor never fully died. Theory number 2, the debt. This goes back to what she told that client in the hotel. If it's true, the last week of her life looks entirely different. It means she wasn't working for spending money, or even just to help her mother. It means somebody had put a deadline on her, and she was taking clients faster than she otherwise would have to make a payment she was terrified of missing. It would mean the person who put her in that room on April 27 wasn't only the man waiting in it. But that account rests on one conversation only one living person ever heard, repeated after she was gone. Police could never confirm the company or the threat. Nobody was ever charged. It's a theory, and it may always be one. In November 2009, TC Intak was invited to a ceremony and handed a Good Citizen Award. By his own description, he was the only person in that room receiving an award who didn't feel good about it. He said his feelings were complicated. He said that in the end, his friend really had done it. And when reporters asked whether the friendship was over, his answer wasn't the one anybody expected. He said he still considered Ting a friend. Think about what that man carried. He picked up the phone 3 times on a Sunday night and was told the truth, and he didn't believe it, because who would? Then he believed it, and doing the right thing cost him a 10-year friendship and got him a certificate he didn't want. Ting Kai-tai appealed. On December 4, 2012, the Hong Kong Court of Appeal dismissed it and upheld both the conviction and the sentence. He's still serving life at Stanley Prison. And then there's the film. In 2011, a Hong Kong director named Philip Yeung wrote a screenplay about this case. He couldn't get it made. Investors told him it wasn't commercial enough. The studios that showed interest came back with title suggestions, and I want to tell you what they were, because they say everything about how this girl was being remembered. One was The Girl in the Sewer. Another was Human Flesh Call Girl. Yeung came close to accepting one called simply The Dismemberment Case. It took him 4 years to get it made on his own terms. When Port of Call was finally released in 2015, it swept the Hong Kong Film Awards, taking 7 prizes including every acting category, the first film ever to do that. And Yeung has said the whole thing started with one question he couldn't shake, not how she died. This. Why would a girl tell a man she barely knew that she wanted to die? And why would he believe her? For 17 years, the loudest fact about this case has been what a man did in a bathroom, the panic in the market, the head that was never found, the face. And I understand why. That's the part that makes you sit up. But it's also the part that let everyone stop looking at the rest of it. Because look at what the last 8 months of her life actually contained. A girl who won prizes reciting poetry in a borrowed language, who watched her mother collect scrap and decided at 16 that she could fix it, who lied to her family about a job because the truth was too embarrassing, who signed up for a makeup class with her sister 3 nights a week and never mentioned the other thing, who picked a name to work under Kimmy because her own didn't feel usable, who sat up talking with her sister at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night about nothing at all and then got up in the dark and left. Every one of those is a moment where somebody could have asked one more question and nobody did. Not because they were cruel, because she was very good at making sure they didn't. That's the actual shape of this case. Not a monster in a bathroom, a 16-year-old who got extremely good at being fine. So if you take one thing from this, take that. The kids in the most trouble are rarely the ones acting like it. They're often the ones with the scholarship and the good grades and an easy answer ready every time you ask. Ask anyway. Wong Ka-mui was 16. She never got a grave with anything in it. And the last thing most people know about her is a sentence that came out of the mouth of the man who took her life. So let's not leave it there. She was the girl who stood up in front of a room in a language she'd only just learned and won. And that's where we close the file for today. I've been Inspector Dax. If this case stayed with you, drop your thoughts below. Your theories help keep these stories from being forgotten. Subscribe, and there'll be a new file waiting on my desk. For now, goodbye, and I'll see you next time.